Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the SERP Creative channel. Hope everyone is doing well out there. Today, another episode of Style Study. This one's sent in by Code 5 Art from Colorado, USA, and he's been writing graffiti now for only around 3 months. Just like to say straight away that only writing graffiti for 3 months and to output this kind of work is really impressive. He clearly has like some kind of past experience in art, using lines, creating shapes, maybe even some lettering based stuff, because he does have a lot of the understanding there. But anyway, let's get straight into the piece. What I like about it and areas I feel like that can be improved. Okay, so alongside this piece that he sent in, he also created his own video, creating the piece and painting it onto a wall. So in this episode, we're going to go through the sketch. We're going to have a look into the piece on the wall that he's created. And we're also going to go over the video and look at some of the techniques he's used and give him some pointers as to where he can improve in the actual painting process. Anyway, so here is the sketch and the letter structure is there. So I'd just firstly like to say that it's really nice blocky stuff. This is what I've always recommended to beginners, is research block lettering and thicken the edges and basically go from there. From that point, mess around with sort of extensions and exaggerating different portions of it. So you can see that there. Another thing that I feel like he's done also very well is something I spoke about in the last episode, which is rulers. So if I bring up these rulers here, so I've got these top 2 rulers. So yeah, I've got these 2 horizontal rulers. So we've got this one, and we've got this one here. Those are our height rulers. So if we can keep all of our letters within those 2 rulers, it shows that all the letters are the same height, and that creates a brilliant base and flow. Everything's going to flow nicely because it's all the same height. The eye isn't being thrown up and down at all. And then I've put in these vertical lines, and this shows the width of his letters. So as we can see here, all are very similar weights. Obviously, we're going to have the W is going to be a little bit wider just because of its base footprint as a letter, and I is a lot skinnier, and W is going to be a little bit wider. But I personally feel like he's sorted out the weight very well in that respect. Really great work on there. Then we can talk about symmetry. So if I put the line of symmetry in here, which is literally if I just grab the 50% on there, draw a straight line down, this is going to be our line of symmetry. The balance is very well, and what I mean by this is the actual total weight. So if we look at the weight of the lettering, we've got this I-O and then part of this W. I'd say that is exactly the same weight as this right hand side. So this here will weigh the same amount as this here. If we had like a load more extensions, say up here or down here or up here, you know, it would push the weight to one side and it would look unbalanced. So he's done a really nice job there, keeping some good balance. So a few negative details I'd say are these 2 here. I don't feel like they add anything, and they've kind of been there just to sort of add a little bit of interest, and they're not really needed at all. So the good details here, I feel like these little flakes here, they're nice. I feel like you could have also added them in the top right there, just to add a balance. You know, you've got 2, one either side of the line of symmetry. From these, I also feel like if you're gonna have something that's above the lettering, you should always add a bit of shading. So I'll go into some shading now. I've gone around and added some shading. There's many ways you can add shading. So in a sketch like this, there's 2 ways you can do it really. So you can use a darker version of the yellow. So you can use a darker marker, darker shade, and add that shading in, or you can use a pencil. So use the pencil, just slightly, really lightly shade it in, and you can create that. So I've added that all the way around the piece. It's really subtle, so I'll remove it now, and you can see really subtle, but it adds a lot of depth and really helps that piece pop off. So if I was going to add some shading, I'd also add some highlights. Really subtle again, so you can add a white paint marker like a Uniposca or something like that to add the highlights. Or when you're doing your fill in, just leave that area of the page there completely blank of color, and let that white from the page shine through and act as the highlight itself. Let's just remove those for a second, and I'd like to talk about the only problem with the letter structure that I really have in this piece is the W. Okay, so the W is nice and it's nearly there. It's just sort of thrown off by the lines. And I feel like the way this has happened is that the lines don't sort of pair up very nicely. Okay, so here you can see I've redrawn the W with the fixed structure, and I really feel like this works well. It really nicely bounces back off that eye. You know, they've both got very sharp, straight lines. This more rigid style works a lot better, and the structure's fixed. But I'll just remove that for a second again. Okay, so I feel like A problem that he's come across is the use of stroke. Okay, so stroke is where you thicken up the edging of the entire layer. So as we can see here, he's got his black outline layer, and then any of these areas that come on the outside, he's thickened up. So as we can see here, this area isn't thickened up, but here is all the way around. Stroke is a common term used in Photoshop and graphic design, but I know it's also translated to graffiti as well. So what I've done here is I've thickened up all of his lines in the interior as well. And I really feel like this helps pronounce each letter a lot more and make everything pop off and look a lot sharper. I've also gone back in with the yellow to tidy up those lines, so we can see there's the original and there's with the tidy up lines. Doing this, you know, you can do it with Sketch with a fine liner, and you can do it on a piece with a really fine cap and then cutting back in. It really helps pop the letters off. Okay, another thing that I feel like he could have very easily done, it's a very simple thing, and I think all beginners should try it. It really helps your pieces pop off, is add a simple 3D. If you're intimidated by 3Ds, just go with a simple drop down 3D. In this case, I've gone with a 45-degree one down on the bottom right corner. So if I put that in there, those are the lines. So you can see all the lines just go from 45 degrees from the point downward a few centimeters. We can then fill that in, and then I've also added some details into there as well, just to help it pop off. So yeah, if we put the shading back in and the highlights, you can see that's the kind of improvements that I would have gone with to make this piece pop off a bit more. Anyway, really nice piece in my opinion. Not really much to talk about, as he has kept the letters extremely simple, hasn't gone in with much extensions, which I like. This is the kind of stuff that I recommend all beginners start with, and then sort of practice with your 3Ds, practice with your highlights, practice with your shading, just to create that kind of simple but really nice popping off design. From here also I've added a little drop shadow, you can see there, just helps it pop off the page a bit more. But anyway guys, now let's move on to the piece. So this is the actual painted piece. So he's taken that sketch and gone straight to the wall. And firstly, I'd like to say, really nice job translating the sketch to the wall. It looks the same, you know. You've done a really nice job there. Some people really struggle translating their paper design to a wall. You know, you're not looking down onto it, you're looking straight at it. And the proportions are different, obviously, and you're using different materials. So people can struggle with that fact. So very well done creating that. Okay, so the first thing that I pick up on with this design is the highlights. Obviously, we've spoken about all the other stuff in the sketching stage, but the highlights, I feel like these would have looked better if the highlights were all the way to the black. You won't really get highlights on a 3D object that kind of sit down into the actual lettering. It will always be on the edging, and that's how I'd do it there. So I'd thicken them up. I'd make them quite transparent. You can do this by using either a transparent white can or a normal white can, creating your shadow and then dusting it back over with a bit of yellow. This will kind of fade it out into the fill a bit more. Yeah, so all the way to the edge, and then I'd go from a distance with a fat cap and just dust it on to create that kind of shine effect. So another thing that I do is add a drop shadow to the piece. What this will do is help it look like it's bouncing off the wall, and it's very easy to do. All you need to do is use like a skinny cap on your black spray that you've used for the outline, and go from a distance and really dust it in very fine. When you're doing this, you can either use, you know, transparent black or just use the normal outline back. Just dust it in, and it really helps pop it off. So what we can see here is that he has struggled with keeping some of these edges very clean. So you can see we've got a bit of overspray in these areas here and some not very clean edges here. You know, it's very hard to control the can at that kind of detail. So as you can see here, we've got some problems there. So what I've recommended in that case is to add a stroke. Okay, so here I've gone with a white stroke. This really helps it pop off the wall a lot more, and it makes it look a lot more defined and separate from the background wall itself. And also the main thing it does is tidy up all your lines. So as we can see here, we've got, even just an example here, we've got this drip. If we add this in, completely covers that. We've got problems here, you know, it tidies up all the corners. So we've got the corner here. It's not a very tidy corner. We add that stroke in with the, and it really kind of tidies it all up. So the way you want to be doing that is just with a white can, and you want to be using like a Skinny Pro outline tip just to get it really fine. And then, you know, if we bring the drop shadow in after that, you can kind of see it coming together there. Okay, so another point that I'd like to talk about is his actual stroke technique. And I'll talk about that in two areas of this piece, which I feel like are relevant. So if I bring this in here, you can see that in red is the technique that he's used and black is the technique that I would recommend. So what he's done is basically this line here that we're looking at is he's done this in one line. So he's come up here, hasn't stopped, he's held down on the cap the whole time, turned, and then turned again and gone up. What we get from this is we get curved edges, and we just haven't got that kind of control. You want to have a nice sharp edge, so what he should have done is broken it down into 3 movements. So he should have sprayed, stopped, sprayed, stopped, sprayed, stopped. From that, we get a nice sharp, every edge is sharp, and you've got that sort of control to stop when you want to. When you're moving quickly and you're turning, you know, you've got that kind of, you're pausing at each corner, and you've got a risk that you're going to get some drips, and it's not going to be as clean as if you do it in stages. Always try and break your lines down into stages. Again here, so what he's done is moved in stages here when he should have kind of done it as a base structure. So we can see here he's gone up, stopped, moved, and then down, and then like that. Okay, so what would make this easier is if he went like this. So you can imagine us using the spray here. What we're going to do is come up with one straight line like this, come down with one straight line, come across one straight line, come across here with one straight line. So what this allows us to do is really keep to that initial structure. When we do this line here and this line here as 2 separate lines, they won't match up, and that's going to be a problem because the eye won't be able to follow them down. It will kind of say one could be coming down like this and then the other comes down like this. You know, they don't pair up, whereas the ones I've shown here do pair up. So all we do here is we come back in with the yellow afterwards and then cut back into the black, and that allows us to have some really sharp lines still that all pair up perfectly because they were all done in one initial stroke. And there we have it. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot cleaner way of doing it, and it's not just A, and you can apply that to sort of any letter. So for example here on the I, we can see that this has been done. That's one line that's been done, and that's the second line that's been done. What I would have done is started here, one stroke, gone all the way down like this, and then to create that sort of cutout effect, I will have gone in with a yellow and gone across like this, and then come from this side and gone across like this, and then just erase those parts there. And then we can make sure that those 2 lines pair up nicely. So yeah, there's a few simple things that I feel like he could have done to help develop this piece a little bit more and, you know, practice a few better techniques. I'm now going to go into his GoPro footage and sort of talk over a few of the things that he's doing there and give him a few pointers of where he can improve for his next piece. So as we can see here at the start, he's laid in his outlines using some kind of chalk. In this instance, I feel like it's a good idea, but if you're painting just normally, I'd always just use the can. The reason for this is just always gives you like that sort of introduction straight away, and it's going to kind of warm you up to using the can, using the cap, bit more muscle memory, and it's going to warm you up because you don't want to be able to just have to go straight into doing outlines and not have that kind of focus. So I'd always use the can for the outline. I'd use my fill color to just create the outline, and then you fill into that and you kind of layer above that. I can also see he's using a fat cap for the first lines. I personally would always recommend using a skinny cap like a banana for the initial lines. The reason for this is you can be super precise, and you can kind of, if you go too wide or too sharp, you can kind of exaggerate that back out and then just fill back over it. So here we can see him creating this line here. So a tip I'd give for that line there would be to try and do it in one fluid motion. Don't kind of speed up and slow down and move to and from the wall distance with your can. Keep it the same distance and move in one fluid motion. This will create the smoothest line as possible, and it will really help you at later stages when you come to fill in and then re-outlining. Other than that, I would like to say, you know, he's said he's been writing for 3 months now. His can control is really good. So that's definitely something to be proud of. Okay, so when he comes here to actually filling in his piece, a technique that I would recommend is the same way that a lot of people do their throw-ups. Get as fat of a cap as possible and move from one side to the other side of each letter. This is going to create that kind of like zebra lined effect. And it's a great way if you don't have enough paint to create a solid fill of filling it and it's still looking nice. If you kind of go from different angles and up and down and left to right and little patches, it kind of creates that effect that kids get when they colour in and they're not doing it in one direction, and it's sort of, some areas look thicker than others and it kind of throws it off and creates this kind of not very nice looking texture. Okay, so for outlining here, I can see that he's using a Montana 94 with a banana cap. Great choice, you know, it's really good for beginners, super low pressure, and it really helps. As you can see, when he's doing this part on the R's, what I talked about, he should break this down into 3 steps. So he'll have the top, the vertical line coming down first, he should stop, and then he should do the horizontal, and then the second vertical. This will really help, you know, keep that control and stop us having those curved edges, and it will also make it easier to cut back into later on. But yeah, you can see he's got some really nice can control, and if he just employed a few different techniques, he could come up with some cleaner lines, and that is subtle, but it really helps bring the whole piece together and helps it kind of look more substantial and pop off the wall a bit nicer. You can see he's doing a great job here cutting back into the letters. Seems to be using quite a dusty cap. I definitely recommend using the universal banana again with the cutting back into. If you're going to go with a solid outline color, you should cut back with a solid color on top of that to really create those sharp edges. So yeah, highlights there using a dusty cap, that's nice. They just need to be further up really, kind of more to the edge of the black. But anyway guys, here's a little Procreate drawing that I did for him, just recreating his piece. I'd just like to say massive thank you to Code 5 for sending your piece in. Brilliant work, mate, and I'm looking forward to seeing another video for you as you evolve, and I hope you take some of these tips on board into your next piece. But anyway guys, if you would like a style study episode done for your own piece, do not hesitate to email it in. Just email it into soapcreative@gmail.com. Just put your tag name, where you're from, and the amount of time you've been writing. I'll be trying to put a video together for you, no problem at all. But anyway guys, thank you for checking out today's video, and I will catch you in the next one.